Hi, and welcome to episode 239 of the Untethered podcast. Today we have Anders Olmanson joining us. Anders is the CEO and founder of REMastered Sleep and the inventor of REMplenish. Anders is a passionate medical innovator who spent 9 months traveling and studying healthcare in Asia and Africa to understand health needs around the world. Previously, he worked as a mechanical engineer at Medtronic and has an MS in medical device innovation and a BS in biomedical engineering. Quick disclaimer, all information, content, and material of this podcast are the opinions of the speakers and is for the informational purpose only and not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified healthcare provider. Welcome to the Untethered podcast. I am your host, Hallie Bulkin. I'm a certified myofunctional therapist, feeding specialist, podcaster, business owner, and mentor. This podcast is all about getting your questions answered and collaborating with colleagues to bring you the most up-to-date information in the orofacial myofunctional therapy, airway, tethered oral tissue, and pediatric feeding therapy space. If you're new here, I challenge you to keep an open mind and join my mission to spread this message far and wide. If you've been around since June 2019, thanks for being a loyal listener. As we jump into today's episode, remember to listen with correct oral rest posture. Tongue up, lips closed, teeth apart, breathe through your nose. Let's get started. Anders, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you back because I know that you all just launched a brand new product that we're going to talk about today that I've been able to trial with my kids, which is fun too. I've got our little straws here. So let's just jump right into it and tell us about this new, REMplenish Jr. launch.
Yeah. So really happy to be talking about REMplenish Jr. So currently we're in an airway health epidemic with over 1 billion people suffering from sleep-related breathing disorders. Due to our modern soft food processed diets, we're not using our mouth muscles as much. Our jaws aren't developing as much. We still don't have our wisdom teeth removed. So we're having smaller and weaker airways. And this can lead to conditions such as snoring, obstructive sleep apnea, all sorts of chronic conditions. So we invented REMplenish Jr. as an easy way for children to exercise these airway muscles, to improve tongue posture, and promote nasal breathing. So we're super excited. It's kind of, if you're not familiar with us, we invented REMplenish. So this is kind of a smaller, more tailored version to children. I'll leave it at that, but then we can go into some questions, and I can talk more about it. So.
Yeah. So you kind of spoke to the why behind why you invented it, right? And how young can a child start using this? What are you guys recommending?
Yeah. So we're kind of currently 4 to 9, but I think 3, we're testing that right now. So I think it might be going to 3 pretty shortly here. But yeah, around that time, that age range. And there's a lot of growth and development that happens from, 3 to 9. So we've kind of developed it to work with that age range. But we do have some adults that maybe this one would probably work better for them just because they haven't developed their mouth as much. So if you do have a smaller mouth, maybe some adults it'd be good for. And vice versa. So it really just depends on it. But yeah, 3 or 4 to 9 is kind of the age range.
Okay. And then, so, a smaller mouth aside, which we know a lot of people struggle with, and that can lead to a lot of airway issues. Do you feel that a 10-year-old would be appropriate at times if they have if their jaws are wide enough, to use the first REMplenish, straw that you guys created, or do you think they still would be appropriate for a smaller one? How do people figure out what's the right size?
Yeah, well, that's something we're still kind of working on right now, and how to let people know. Because, people don't really think of how big their mouth size is, unless you're working with a professional. So yeah, that's a great question. I would say stick, at least for now, stick with the age range, and then as they develop more, it might make more sense to move to adult one. But adults could use the child size one. And we've had, many children that have used our adult one, successfully. So it's kind of it, maybe it doesn't, this is definitely tailored though. So we've improved it. We have these proprioceptive bumps. So this is actually what we use. I don't know if you can see it in the video or not, but it's got these bumps on it that helps children locate where the tip of their tongue should go. So the tip of the tongue should go behind, in the spot behind the top front teeth. This can help them locate it. If it's a younger child, you might say, find the bumpies. If it's an older child, put the tip of the tongue on the bumps. what this also does, we've seen in some studies that this helps desensitize children that have maybe they have too, they haven't built up the neural pathways. They don't want things going near their mouth as much. It can help desensitize that a bit. And there's actually a really cool case study. I don't know if you can see this, so let me make sure I'm showing it right. So right here, this is a 6-year-old boy, and I don't know if it looks fuzzy on my screen, but hopefully you can see it. You can see how
Yeah.
kind of the upper arch, like how narrow it is. He had issues where he couldn't eat different foods. He also had some, just he wouldn't let people near his mouth just because he wasn't comfortable with that. Just by using REMplenish Jr for 2.5 months, you can like see the changes in his arch. Like he was able to get his tongue posture up. He's able to like expand that. He's now drinking and eating more foods they wasn't able to before. And then he's also like letting people near his mouth. So he's like saved months of therapy time just by using our REMplenish Jr prototype. So it's kind of like there's a lot of really cool stuff you can get out of it. Like the tongue is just so important for just overall like health and well-being, whether it's eating, speaking, breathing, and just your growth and development. Just having good tongue posture, and getting that outward force. You're not always the inward cheek force. Just having it expand your palate. So a lot of cool stuff that we've seen in our like preliminary testing. Yeah, so I went off
No,
a
that's
little bit
awesome.
tangent
That's
there.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so, as like a feeding therapist, right? And when we teach straw drinking on like just a rounded normal straw, we're usually saying, okay, only let the straw go to your lips. Like, let's focus on getting the tongue up to this spot. We don't want it going past the teeth because for a lot of the kids, it will promote that like tongue forward posture or like the thrusting that they tend to do. So, that was actually something that we're still working on with my now 8-year-old who after more expansion, we basically you don't hear a tongue thrust, but I can see it. I know that that's not functional. Like, over time, it'll probably become more dysfunctional. So we're addressing it, even though her speech sounds okay and her swallowing appears okay, although the tongue is still coming forward a bit. So that was naturally like her tendency with this too. Like when she tried it, she wanted to put it in and she did put most of that tip, because I looked at your instructions and it says like that most of this, like your lips should only go up to where the sizing changes, right? Like right here at the base and not beyond that, which would then make sense that the tongue would help give some sensory input, these little bumps to the tongue to be like, hey, get that tongue up to the roof of the mouth. So we played around with it a bit and I even had her like pull back on it a little bit just to see like what would happen. And so I guess my question, right, as a feeding therapist, and I think other therapists might have too, is are we using this as sort of like a tool to teach these things and we want to use it for X number of hours per day or for drinking, throughout certain parts of the day, but then over time is the goal that like we don't need this anymore because now it's basically taught the correct oral rest posture and then they should have the tongue up and be able to drink through like a little circle straw, just with their lips, with their tongue in the right place and all that fun stuff. Like, yeah, I would love to hear like, just thoughts behind that. And
Yeah, no, definitely. So it's kind of both, because one is you do want to correct, any bad habits, kind of, definitely correct like the tongue thrust or make sure the tongue posture's up. So that's like a big part of it. But then, kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning with, we aren't eating as hard of foods, like we're not using our mouth muscles as much. So that's where like some of the benefits of, having more of that, repetitions, you're exercising these muscles, you're strengthening them. And the thought would be, and we're still doing like studies on this, but at least with the preliminary stuff, it seems to help with that growth and development part. So the thought would be, hopefully, you're building a bigger airway. So we'll definitely have like more data, coming up in the future, but at least in the preliminary stuff, it seems to show that. So, but yeah, so it's kind of both, and really, and then it depends, and we do want children. At least the therapists we worked with, we're working with like Karen DeOng in Texas and some other ones across the country. So, really they really recommend like the more the children can do this therapy, the better. And so that's why we've actually, we recommend it with the bottle. So the reason for this is it makes it easy for the kids, they can bring it with them. They can take it to school, whatever aspect where they can get the therapy throughout the day. And it's so easy for them to pick up, like at least a lot of the ones, especially when you have it in like the bottle form, like the children, they just instantly, they know what to do. They don't really have to think about it too much. We use, natural biomechanical motion. So kind of like we took, the actions of breastfeeding, but we, use more of an adult mechanism of that. So it's very natural for a lot of children just to pick up and use. It's probably like more for the instructions we give is probably more for the parents, just so, so they know. But yeah, for the parents, at least, we also have like a animation video online. So, the instructions are really good, but, if they want to know more, we have a 3D animation where you can see inside of the mouth what's happening. And that's been really helpful for parents. We had like one that was, we sent, a prototype to her, and she was kind of giving some feedback on Instagram where she's like, yeah, like I wasn't sure if my child would be able to use it, but just took it off, used it right away, or, just took off with it, just used it right away, like correctly. And I, so they were looking at the animation video just to make sure, but yeah, I wouldn't show the children the animation video. It's a little too like complicated, little.
Yeah, well, Molly said to me, she was like, all right, don't read anything like yourself. Don't tell your kids what to do. Just take it, wash it, put it on the straw, give it to them, and like let them do their thing. She said most kids figure it out. And I think at first we, because we just got the tops, we didn't have like the water bottle wasn't ready yet. So we didn't have like your straw with it. So I put it on, I don't remember what straw I put it on, but she was like, it's not working. I'm not getting any water. And so I was like, okay, it's probably the straw. So I switched it to like a metal straw, and with the metal straw that I think actually fit like the whole better. It was just like the difference in the two straws that I was using. And then it just like, boom, she got like, it was totally the straw that I attached to it. So, yeah, my kids both like, my 5.5-year-old and my 8-year-old both immediately picked up on like how to use it. They needed zero instruction. And the only reason why I even went to like read the instructions was, was because I was like, I want to see what it says. I know we're going to be talking, like, being in the space. I'm like, I'm just curious to see like what the, what the instructions are, which is where I saw like, information on how far the lips should go and so on and so forth. And I thought it was very straightforward and very like easy to understand. Being a professional in this space, I feel like maybe I don't need instructions, right? But I feel like if you're someone who's not in this space to, get something like this and be like, oh, that looks different than your normal straw. What do we do with it? I think it was pretty clear and like simple. And I also love like the like insert, that little like the brochure, the pamphlet that comes with it is like super straightforward, which was really great.
Yeah. Well, and then something that's kind of circling back to what you're talking about earlier with like the tongue thrust. So a lot of therapists use it to help, first, I was just on a different like webinar and they're kind of talking about their experience. They'll give like the products, and this is maybe more adult focused, but I think it works more for like if it's a therapist working with a child too. Like they'll kind of give them like let them start using it a little bit, and then when they work into the swallowing portion, that's when they really start doing that. And especially for like tongue thrusting, like really it's once they get the spot placed when they start using it, you're really just doing a lot of repetitions of the correct swallowing, and it helps like reinforce that pattern. So a lot of them do use it to help with that like tongue thrusting. And then they also use it as like after like a program, like if you go through a myo program or a speech therapy program, just to keep getting the consistent therapy and the results. It's not saying like people don't want to keep up with their exercises afterwards, but sometimes it's kind of hard to be doing that for a long period of time. So it's a great way.
Well, yeah, I mean, right. The idea is you want to habituate that, all of that. And our goal, like, at least when I work with, and my team works with patients, like, we don't want you having to do exercises for the rest of your life. Like, hopefully what we do when we work with you sets you up so that you don't have to do exercises. But we, as part of like the habituation program afterwards, like we do typically ask that they will kind of wean themselves off of exercises, if you will. So, I mean, it sounds like it could be a really great replacement where like people aren't having to think about it, because if you're able to just put something like this on your water bottle and just drink throughout the day, and if you drink water anyways, it's probably just going to kind of lock those habits, those healthy habits, right, into place versus like, continuation of those poor oral habits and noxious oral habits that we want to get rid of. So yeah, to like establish the healthy habits, correct oral rest posture, tongue up, lips closed, swallowing properly, all that fun stuff. So that's actually a really cool idea to use something like this for maintenance and to really, not have to worry so much about, okay, let me carve time out of my day to go and do my maintenance exercises to then see if I actually fully habituate these healthy patterns, 3 months from now. So I like that. That's, all about ease these days, right? Like what can we build into the life, like things that we're already doing throughout the day. So that's really cool. I'm going to have to try this, on that end too with my kids, because we just got it. So we haven't done too much with it, but yeah, I'm all for ease.
Yeah. Well, and they were actually saying, at least the therapist group I was talking to, and these are like, more, I guess, myofunctional therapists, but they're saying actually like improved like the long term, like, and they're studying this, they're like researching like, okay, these ones that we did it with, how did like it help them, and did they have any, like, did they have to come back and stuff, like how did it overall, like over a longer period of time. And they're like, this is, so they're like, this is really cool, like how much it's like helping them maintain their stuff. So hopefully we'll have like more data and more like research kind of coming in, like, and if anyone else has any like of their experiences, if they want to share like either case studies or just their stuff, like we're starting on our website, we're putting more of this stuff together, including like the case study that I just showed, for just always getting more data and like cool stuff like that. So so one thing, okay, I guess I should probably talk about this, in case people are wondering what the difference between like the REMplenish and the REMplenish
Yeah,
Jr.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
Side,
yeah,
side.
yeah. Maybe I'm jumping ahead. So
No, go for it.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully you can see this here. So basically, it is slightly smaller, so it isn't as big as the adult nozzle. Another thing is we've changed the flow profile, so it's more tailored to the children in the age range I specified. And then the bumps is kind of the biggest things, and all those things, like, really we're trying to get at kind of what we were talking about earlier about like not needing very much instructions. Like that was kind of our goal. Like, how can you make this really easy for kids, children to pick up without having to, really have to think about it or instruct them. So we spent a lot of time like, doing R&D, as well as like working with different like SLPs and myofunctional therapists, just getting feedback on how can we make something. So we're really proud of what we put together. It's like an awesome product. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I mean, and that's, being in the business world and marketing and all that. It's important. It's hard sometimes to like, okay, how do we get so much information into such a small statement, but also like explain to people what this is and like how it's going to make their lives easier and also improve their health. And also, it's like also.
Yeah.
So no, that's why when I commented on like the insert, I was like, wow, you guys did a really good job of really bringing the important information that I think is like relevant to actually using this tool to help, whoever's going to be using it. And maybe these parents who are like, how do we do this? And, so like I said, I loved when Molly was like, don't she was like, don't say anything to your kids. Just like, let them try it, see what happens. And I was like, I never would have thought about that, because my brain normally would just go straight to the instructions and be like, okay, what do we do with this? I was like, that's a great idea. Just let the kid try it first and see what happens. And they both, like I said, my 5.5-year-old and 8-year-old both took to it right away.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool.
So aside from there's like three main differences, right? You said so the flow, the size, and there was one other thing. It was the bumps, right? Okay.
Yeah, the
Okay.
receptor bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, and no, that's really cool too, because as being in the myo world and also the pediatric feeding world, like you were mentioning early on, there are the kiddos who are sometimes really orally defensive, right? And they don't want anything near their mouth, and but they may drink from a straw. And so this may actually, like, I love tools for children who are like, they see food and they're like, or they're like, because there's people in the feeding therapy world and even the myo world who are like, let's use, food as our tool and let's just jump straight in with the food on day one. And I'm like, I mean, that might work for some kids, but oftentimes the kids who are at least the feeding therapy ones too, where there's a crossover of like feeding aversions or low intake of certain foods and, reducing the amount of the types of foods they take in and all that. I'm like, they don't want to meet you the first time and have to eat with you. Like that's not going to be helpful for anybody. And, and so I love tools that work towards specific goals and that are functional, and that also, at the same time, we're not having to like come at the kid's face with a tool necessarily, like not saying that that's what we do, but the kid, this is something that the child can use independently. And I think having that sense of control for the nervous system too could be really incredible, because if they're like, oh, it's a funky straw. Okay, let me just try and drink my water from this. And it starts to give them that sensory input too, that, they're like, oh, this is not so bad, or, I'm sure there'll be some kids too that, if they do have like a hyperactive gag reflex and anything that goes past the front third of their tongue makes them kind of go like, like, what is that? I feel like, you mentioned desensitization, and I think desensitizing or even reducing sensitivity or moving that gag reflex back, like that's what we love. As a feeding therapist, I love tools because it helps us do that in a less invasive way, if you will, because it's not food and the kids can usually be like, okay, I can breathe. Nobody's expecting me to eat right now. And so I just feel like, again, like this could be really cool for those purposes, and I love that you mentioned that early on.
Yeah. And that part we're still like studying. So that's just like kind of our preliminary stuff. So we're still kind of like learning more of like how it helps
Yeah.
different like, things. But at least the preliminary stuff is pretty cool, what we've kind of seen so far. So yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully,
Well, and we
you
know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, like when the tongue is not up there in the palate, right? And it's not that palate's not used to getting that kind of input because it's high or narrow or whatever it might be. And, if they're not a thumb sucker or they're not putting anything else up into the palate on a regular basis, that's where this may be, again, just a really good introduction to like getting something up there. And then eventually the tongue kind of makes its way up when they're not using the straw, which would be super cool to see. So I'm excited to see like what data like comes out of all of this and what you guys learn from what you're looking at.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely keep stuff going. Something that's pretty cool, at least on the adult side, is we're currently testing our adult one for obstructive sleep apnea with Mayo Clinic right now. So we are doing some like cool research. We're always looking for like more opportunities. So if there are any like therapists or other healthcare professionals that are looking to do studies, like yeah, just reach out to us. That's kind of where we're at right now, is trying to get more data. And we do have a bunch of healthcare professionals testing it right now, kind of, just getting their feedback. But yeah, so it's really, really cool stuff.
I love that. I love that. I mean, there's such an opportunity, I think, to help patients. And so if there's something that, like we said, we were talking about that you do throughout the day, you drink water, if this can be something that helps people, with various diagnoses, I think that's awesome. What, like, are there certain things that you guys are seeing like preliminary or that you're actually studying related to obstructive sleep apnea? Like, is it basically oral rest posture while they're awake and that's changing, or I'm sorry, while they're asleep and that's changing, like better control over the tongue? Are you allowed to
Yeah,
talk about that? I don't know. It's
yeah.
yeah.
So we're more doing it like, because we did preliminary studies, 93% of snorers report improvement in snoring with our adult one after 1 month of use. And then we had like 34%, this is a snoring population, 34% report improvement in tiredness. So they're like, yeah, I'm not waking up in the middle, as much in the middle of the night. Like I used to wake up in every hour or two, and now I'm waking up after like 5 or 6 hours, and that's pretty like strong qualitative evidence that maybe there's something going on. So that's kind of what we're studying, was like, one is like tongue strength. So we're kind of doing sleep study before and after. So, getting apnea hypopnea index, how many times you stop breathing at night, every hour. We're also looking at like blood oxygen, blood oxygen percentage. And then we're looking at, snoring scores, kind of like we're just doing the sleep study part, but then we're also doing myofunctional assessments. So we're looking at, okay, we have a whole like scoring thing, like, okay, do you have good tongue posture, do you have like a good lip seal, do you have like, so it's kind of like this 10, I believe it's 10 questions or 10 like areas of assessment. And then we do IOP measurements, the Iowa Oral Performance Instrument, so we do where they're doing tongue strength, so they're kind of seeing how that changes, and tongue endurance. So it's kind of like looking at a variety of things. And for sure, yeah, like tongue posture is huge, tongue strength is huge. Are you doing things properly when you swallow? And really when you're sleeping, having that good tongue posture, it stabilizes your jaw and your tongue, so it's not as likely for it to fall back into the airway. So it's like one aspect. Another aspect is just strengthening all the musculature and soft tissues, so they're not going to like vibrate or collapse as much. So yeah, there's like a lot of things that are going on. But myofunctional therapy studies and doing these exercises, like they've shown to reduce obstructive sleep apnea by 50% or greater. Same with snoring. So it's kind of like, it's just like one of those things that, I think more of the medical community needs to kind of understand a little bit. Like we can use our own bodies to kind of help ourselves versus, having to wear something at night, at least for, depending on how severe it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're more severe, maybe there's other things we should be using, but yeah. And then really what we're trying to do with the
Yeah.
juniors, can we prevent some of these things from ever happening? Like early intervention is key, so do we have to go down this path of when we're an adult needing a CPAP, like I don't think anyone wants to go down that path. So what can we do to set ourselves up for success? So that's kind of what we're like,
Well,
really our
and
mission is. Yeah.
so I would say truly like these days, sleep apnea is, occurring in children. And I feel like they're actually like younger and younger, even teenagers I'm hearing on CPAP machines. And it's kind of, it's sad and scary to think like, that a child is going to be on this for the rest of their life. And, I feel like they keep backing up the age. And so to have these little ones that, I completely agree with you. I'm a big proponent of like early intervention, like let's get in there, let's do what we can now and like write the path and write, the pathway for growth and everything, because we all know it snowballs, right? It just keeps getting worse if we don't intervene. And so I think this is, again, I think it's pretty cool that like you've got this, and it, I know it's geared towards 4 to 9. You said maybe some 3-year-olds. You guys are kind of looking at that too. But I think that's awesome. I think it's really incredible to have a tool that, could potentially help on that journey, because we know it's a big one for them. And I think it'll be cool too to see what else happens with some of these younger children and their actual palate shapes, because the case study you shared is exciting. And there's a lot of discussion around how well, after 6 months of age or so, you can't really change your own palate shape, once things start to really harden. And we know, and we've also learned that adults can go through expansion. That's a lot of things are being, discussed in different ways depending on who you're talking to. But with like the little kids, a lot of parents will say, or even therapists will say things like, well, we want to get the tongue up there, but like we know we're going to have to go into an expander if they're older than 6 months, or two, once they have 2-year-old molars, they could possibly start expansion or something. And I'm not saying kids are not going to need expansion, but I think it seems like it also may be possible that getting the tongue up there and the pumping action and, the consistent activity throughout the day could also potentially lead to, a healthier shape of the palate, just based on that case study you shared.
Well, and the tongue, that's the natural, like your body's natural expander, like that should be the first thing. Can we get the tongue up? Can we start getting that, positive, like, positive aspect of the body part? Definitely if you need expander, like that's awesome too. But, I think that should be number one. Let's get the tongue up and get that working properly. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of, everyone's always like, what comes first, like the chicken or the egg, right? Like, well, what if they can't get the tongue up? What if there isn't enough space for it? What if there's a tethered oral tissue? And so I know there's like always people who are going to be like, what do we do first? But it seems like, regardless, you could still try this and see, how it goes. And obviously with certain concerns, you're going to have this will be a part of your treatment plan, not necessarily just like a standalone thing that you're using with a young child who may be needing more, or any patient really. But that's where I've seen it too, like from colleagues where they are using this as part of like their myofunctional therapy program. And so now that we have this for like younger kids, we might see it more even in feeding therapy programs and, therapy treatment programs. So that could be cool.
Yeah, for sure. And something, and we did design it to like, so should, people are going to use it correctly. So if someone's not getting water out of it, other than if they're using the wrong straw, like you mentioned earlier, but like, we did design it where if you're not using it properly, you're going to get very little water flow. So that could be, maybe they're not using their tongue as much as they need to, kind of doing that tongue suction. So that's something to like look into. The other aspect would be if they have like a very severe, like, tethered, like if they have a tongue tie, just having that could be a barrier. But you can, like, we definitely have a lot of therapists that use it for frenectomies and post. So it's kind of just to help get that tongue, the tongue strength, kind of get it up there, like loosen it up a little bit. They've seen a lot of success using it like pre, that and post as well, to kind of learn. And for those, people that have that, they find that like after their tongue tie release, that now they're like, oh, now I really understand how to use it because I can fully use my tongue the way it's, supposed to be, and like helping them relearn how to do some of these things is really beneficial. But definitely, if they do have any issues, like it could be either they're not using it correctly, or maybe they do have some kind of, tethered tissue that they need to look at, or, other things. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah.
So right now, if someone wanted to buy it, is it on the website? Like, where do they go to get it?
Yep. So it's at REMasteredsleep.com. So we sell it both, directly to, the general public. So if someone wants to use it like that, that works great. Or we also sell it to healthcare professionals. So we have different, discounts if you buy in bulk, or maybe you can get like a coupon code for your practice, depending on how, if you're virtual or in person. We really recommend, like, for therapists or other healthcare professionals to carry it in their practice if they're able to, just because it kind of, you can incorporate it into your therapy kits. it's kind of like one of those, we found like if people are like, oh yeah, let's go through this therapy, and it's can be expensive for some parents, and then you add something else onto it, then that can be like, okay, well, I just, I'm paying all this money, now you want me to do this too. Whereas it's easier just to incorporate it all into like a whole therapy plan. And then carrying it, is a great way to do it. But yeah, if you're virtual, obviously you can send it out differently. So, but yeah, definitely go to REMmasteredsleep.com. You can, if you're a therapist, reach out on we have demos, as well as you can reach out directly to our sales team. So sales@REMmasteredsleep.com. We have discounts at like tier discounts, like orders at 12 or 24 or like 120. So I think those automatically apply if you just check out, but reach out to our sales team if you have any questions. And we do have like a contact form too they can fill out. So yeah.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. That question for you, and now I forgot what it was. It was when we were talking about we were talking before you were sharing this information, so maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, is there anything else regarding the REMplenish Jr. or anything else that we haven't covered that you want to share?
No, I think it's an awesome tool. Like, we're super excited. We've had healthcare professionals asking for this for longer than I'd like to admit. So we've spent a lot of time doing R&D and getting it ready. So we're just super excited to finally have it available. It'll officially launch, like, we've started pre-orders, so you can order now, and then it officially launches like mid-October. So we'll start like shipping out product and stuff. So we're definitely like really excited to have this, and something that we've been putting a lot of good research and development and working with a lot of great like therapists, and to I'm just so thankful for all the people that kind of helped bring it together. So yeah, we're super excited.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. And I love that you guys are doing research still on the back end so that you'll have more information to, share with the public, in the future once that's all wrapped up. Because I think, obviously as clinicians, we can see what works and what doesn't work when there is a therapist involved, right? But a lot of people like the research to also back what we're seeing. And so I think that's cool that you guys are involved in so much research. You're getting a lot of feedback from providers as well. I think that's all amazing, because not a lot of companies do that these days. They tend to throw products on the market and make claims and maybe attach one person's name to it, and that's like their whole marketing plan. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are working closely with medical providers, and whether it's SLPs or SLPs who are myotherapists or other myotherapists and whatnot. I think that'll be very cool to see what comes.
Well, what I'll say about like clinical research is it's expensive and it takes a long time to do. So it's like there's probably a reason. It's not easy to do it.
Yeah, it's very expensive to fund, right? And I know that typically it takes 17 years on average for like what's being published now for it to catch up, right? Like it's so obviously by the time a lot of things come to, and I know if you're paying for it privately, sometimes it doesn't take as long, but I've started to learn about this through other colleagues who are doing other types of research in the space. And even though I quote unquote did research back in my graduate program and took a research course and all that stuff, I don't think I appreciated it or really understood it, back then. But colleagues who have really taken a deep dive into actually doing the research or funding the research or trying to get funding for research have really brought that whole conversation to light. And I think it's tricky and it's challenging. So that's why I'm like, I can appreciate when somebody takes on a project like this, because it's not easy. It takes time. It is expensive, right? It takes a lot of, there's a lot of moving pieces. And then half the time, even some of the data you get, you can't even use. So you're like, man, all right, well, we tried now. So I appreciate, like I said, all the work that you guys are doing and in this space, because we do need more research, even just in the airway space in general. And I think this will help add to that too.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a whole thing. Like, we're trying to change, how practice is done, because kind of, I don't know, at least from like I'm a biomedical engineer. I have a master's of science in medical device innovation. Used to work at Medtronic. Like, so I'm coming from like the medical side, and like kind of the standard, like gold standard is like just let's put someone on a CPAP, and is that like, I don't know, is that the best way to do it? Like, some people, yes, but it's kind of that, can we change how we go after all these like conditions and do it in a more, positive or preventative way, or more like healthy, using your own body kind of way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, we're trying to change like the whole thing, or at least be a part of the change. And I think there's a lot of people that, a lot of therapists, that once you kind of know. So, once you get into Airway, you're like, okay, now I can't stop seeing all the things that we need to help start addressing. So I think, just being part of that movement, the Airway health movement is really important. So we're doing our
Yeah.
best to move that forward. So
Yeah. Well, and to your point, right, there are people who may be prescribed to CPAP, but compliance with CPAPs are actually not great. Like I know there's a lot of data surrounding how many people don't wear their CPAP because for various reasons. One, it's clunky. Two, it's noisy. Three, it doesn't fit their face right. It falls off constantly and they don't even know that they could possibly, talk to their ENT or the prescribing doctor to get another face mask or even try another CPAP, and so I feel like, I've fallen into this world a little bit with like a family member and I started to see this and I was like, huh, okay. Like, we hear CPAP, we think it's like you said, quote unquote gold standard, but there isn't even a lot of great support for those who do use CPAPs. And so I feel like there need to be more options. And the other thing you said too, that, that came up that you mentioned twice that I completely agree with is our body typically knows how to heal itself if we give it the right supports, right? And so having to use something external for the rest of your life, like a CPAP, for example, like I'm not, and by no means am I telling anybody you stop using their CPAP. This is not medical advice. A lot of people will voice though that if they could avoid having to use that for the rest of their life, they would gladly do so if there was another option or something else they could do. And of course, that comes into how much work are they willing to put in to get there, right? Depending on what that treatment plan looks like in the airway space. But I think it's cool. Like I was saying that, this kind of does help us get back to nature in a sense. It kind of like is teaching the body a lot of like what we do in our more behavioral, I always say behavioral, not like behavior, but like in myofunctional therapy, in feeding therapy, that's considered more of like a behavioral approach because we're basically teaching habits, healthy habits, right? And so if we can get back to teaching the body what it's supposed to be doing versus like needing some external device or, appliance for the rest of our life, I think like that stuff is where I get excited because I'm like, this is cool. This is like, yes, like this is what we want everybody to be doing. So much healthier. So it's cool. It's cool to have something like this that works and that, people can try out and see, what it does to help them.
yeah, no, that's awesome. And kind of like, yeah, our mission is just really how can we eliminate preventable airway health issues? How can we, and this is like a modern society problem. So it's like, how do we, and obviously we could all just start eating harder foods again. Maybe that's like the answer too, but like, I don't know. It's kind of, this is just a tool to help because it's hard to shift everyone's behavior, to kind of, and maybe it doesn't make sense for everybody to be having to chew on things for 4 hours a day or whatever, our ancestors were doing back then. So yeah, just kind of modern tools for kind of a modern problem. So yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I know that this episode will come out, after you guys, I think, have everything up on the website and if you started shipping, is what I actually meant to say. I know it's up on the website for pre-order, but by that point, I think people still be several weeks after we record, they'll be able to order and they'll be shipping out. And so that's fun.
Okay, and one thing I should probably definitely add, like, so CPAP it works really well. So for people who are using it, definitely, keep using it. And we do have, if you do have residual AHIs, we've had some people that like they've combined their CPAP or mandibular advancement device with REMplenish. They reported improvements, not waking up as much. So it's something we're looking into as well. But like definitely CPAP's a great solution. If you need it, definitely use it. But if you don't necessarily have to, so maybe there's other alternatives if you are looking for things. And we're doing our studies on the obstructive sleep apnea side. So hopefully there's some cool things, cool new options in the future. So yeah. Just had to make that caveat,
Yes, of course. That's why I said to I was like, look, we're not medical advice. No one's telling you to stop your CPAP. Yeah, no. And I think that it's great because like we said, like there are the different options out there in the airway space these days, whether it's, a mandibular advancement, appliance, some kind of an appliance. There's other ones too, from some airway dentists, they've created that are, being studied and being used, and obviously CPAP and, so if you have a current treatment plan, please don't go treat. Yeah. Like as Anders said, do not stop using it. Don't go change things yourself. Please speak to, your team and the professionals before you make any changes. But But I think that'll be cool too if there's, you guys are looking at the combination of, using the REMplenish with, these other tools too. It'd be cool to see what happens because, I feel like there's never like one treatment plan for everybody. And I think how severe things are or what your profile looks like, what your case looks like may be very different from one person to the next. And so it'd be very interesting to see the data and everything that comes out of this.
Yeah. No, we're super excited. So yeah, that's awesome.
Well, thank you again for joining me. Any last comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think kind of I'll reiterate the kind of the airway health movement. We're really trying to, how can we, because people just don't know about this problem in the general public. Like it's once you go through this journey, now you kind of know, but many healthcare professionals are still learning. A lot of the general public is kind of still learning. So if there's, opportunities for people to share, like whether, if you're a healthcare professional, like just getting the word out there, or we're trying to like elevate different healthcare professionals in the communities. We have we work with a PR firm. So we're trying to get news stories around what airway health is and why it's important. So really like, how can we spread the word? Because there's, once people know, they're like, oh my God, this is like life-changing. My child has this problem. I've had this problem. Like, what can we do? So if there's, definitely, if you're looking for opportunities to share, or, we are looking for like healthcare professionals that if they want to share their story, kind of just reach out. And, I think we just have to keep moving this forward and getting the word out and letting people know, and hopefully helping, a lot of people. So there's over 1 billion people who have this issue. So there's a lot of people that need help. And so how can we get them the help they need? So
I love that. It's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, and and so I keeps going, because it, like you said, it's not enough people know that it's even an issue, or that it's an issue that they have other options on, or that, there's just a lot that can be done in a lot of ways that we can help you. And then there's people who just have no clue that the airway is even an issue to begin with, right? And they haven't started their journey at all. And that's not just the general public, that goes for providers as well. So, the more that all of us can kind of come together and elevate that message and market, what's working and what the options are. I love that. I think that's, the louder we are and the more we are, like, what do they say? It's, I can't think of what it is off the top of my head right now, but I was thinking it's sort of like you make progress with greater numbers of individuals who are all kind of saying the same message and who are all on the same mission. And so strength in numbers, that's where I was going, strength in numbers. It's like if we can get more people kind of opening up their eyes to the whole airway space and understanding even just the message and understanding what options exist, I think, we would all be much better off, because we got over 1 billion people with airway issues walking around. We've got a very sleepy society who is not functioning as they should be internationally, really, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you again so much, Anders. This has been amazing. I am excited for everyone to check out the product. Like I said, you guys sent a couple to my girls and they took right to them. So it'll be cool to see what other kids do with it too. And we'll have to take some videos and pop those on Instagram and make sure everybody can, hear a little bit more about the REMplenish Jr.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And thanks for having us on again. Like, we really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more of these MyoTots airway and feeding related episodes, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode on your social media platforms. You can access free resources and all I offer at halliebalkin.com, or pop over to @HallieBalkin on Instagram to get all the latest updates.